It is 9:30 on a Thursday night, and you are tuned into Beltway Radio and Beyond, which can mean one and only thing. This is ChipChat. Welcome to ChipChat, everybody. I'm Chip. Tez is on assignment tonight, so joining us is Stacy. Hi, Stacy.
Hello, everybody.
We were off for a few weeks for Thanksgiving, which resulted in much turkey and once again proving Alton Brown wrong. So I'm proud of that. How was your Thanksgiving? Did you succeed in proving Alton Brown wrong?
We went to a restaurant. It was fantastic.
Oh, I'm sure that was great too. Okay. Also, there was an awards show, which we are going to talk about a little bit later. Let's see. Trump is a dictator in waiting. That was cool to find out this week. There was a lot of quiet part out loud in the news this week. The situation in Israel and Gaza is deteriorating, so unfortunately we do have to talk about that. And yeah, Tez isn't here, but his people were spying on us all this time. Did you know that, Brian?
Which who? What?
He has a lot of boxes to check. The Cubans in this case.
Okay.
Yeah,
I heard about some drones came over the castle at Ravens Park today. So
okay,
so
well that might be happening too. Okay, well we'll have to get to that. Let's see what else is going on. There is curling news, which is why it's really good that Stacey's here. I don't know what's the news in the curling world, Stacey.
Oh, remember all the drama of last year? We're gonna do a 1-year update as to where at least local curling is now.
It just got swept under the rug.
Pretty much.
There you go. That was bad. Okay, let's see what else. Oh, there's crazy news about Dumb Kevin. And normally when we have news about Dumb Kevin, it's just about how he's dumb. But not this week. Oh, no. Stay tuned if you don't already know. It's going to be wild. That's the words, right? It's going to be wild. That's what you say right before an insurrection. Also, we have a guest this week. We have a brilliant guest. She's an author and writer and I don't know what to call it, but like collector of anthologies. That's the word maybe, or like compiler.
We can ask her.
We'll ask her. What's the actual title for people who do this? But anyway, so Nora Shalloway Carpenter is going to be here, and we're going to talk to her about her books, all kinds of. It's going to be. This is a packed show. There's just so much to talk about. I didn't even know because I didn't write it, but we'll see. Brian, did you have a good break?
Yeah, it's busy as well as fun. So festive. Yeah.
Okay, good. We're gonna ask you stuff later. You won some awards.
Yeah, a lot of hardware.
Yeah, Brian's got a lot more awards. Whoever owns this network really likes that guy. So it's good to know. All right, Stacey, do you remember how to do the word thing?
Yes.
Okay. So do you have a word?
Yes.
Okay. Well, let's see if it works. So anyway, everybody get ready. Sit back, grab some
latkes.
It's bagel time. You're listening to the best show, the only show, Chip Chat on Beltway Radio and Beyond. Sweeps. All right, welcome back to Chip Chat. I'm your host, Chip. With me tonight is Stacy. Say hi to Stacy.
Hello.
So thank you for mentioning latkes. It is Hanukkah after all. Happy Hanukkah to everybody.
Happy Hanukkah to you.
Thank you. We lit our first set of candles tonight, and we'll continue doing so for the next 8 days until the what the Goyim call a menorah, but is actually called a Hanukkah, gets so hot that it melts everything around it. So, you know, the fire gets increasingly large. As some people know, Hanukkah took place, the holiday the event that it commemorates took place in Israel, which is what we're going to have to talk about next. So we've
Before
been
we
kind of
do,
like,
quick question.
Yeah.
As a chef and someone who probably enjoys latkes, sour cream or applesauce?
so this recently the Goyim have found out that this is a long-standing debate. Neither is bad. They're both good. I like everything. I'm not going to say no. That's what I'm going to say. Traditionally, in my family, what have we had is more applesauce than sour cream, but access to both, good. Is all good. The only problem you really get into is not so much a latke debate as it is a blintzes debate. And if people put fruit in the blintzes, that's not correct. It shouldn't be that. It should be cheese blintzes with various fruit compote on the side. So you can, get a cheese blintz and, cut a little piece of it and scoop a little bit of blueberries on it. Perfect. That's the way to do it. If you got blueberry blintzes, you got to put sour cream on it. You're kind of going the wrong direction.
I'm glad we were able to settle this.
Yeah. But no, everything is good. We went to the store today. We got some potatoes and some onions. We're gonna make some latkes during the week. If you want to know, you want the yellow or the golds potatoes, things that make good strings when you grate them. It's nice. You don't want the mealy sort of russet types that are good for mashing. That's not good for latkes. And the really important trick is to soak the starch out of them. So you grate it and soak them in the water and get the starch out and squeeze them. Squeeze the potatoes to get that starch out so that when you mix up your latkes and they hit the pan, they start to brown off nicely. And you don't got to deal with all that ooey gooey starch. That's no good. Not in this application. And save it for later, of course. Potato starch. You want that. You need it at Passover. Okay. Anyway, back to Israel. So there's a terrible war going on. And one of the ways that we on this show are trying to deal with this is to only revisit this periodically, because it could take up the entire show and it could be like our only focus. And for people like me and the way that I've got family involved in the conflict and all of this, I really got to limit my consumption of the news about this in pretty profound ways.
It's heavy.
Yeah, it's probably smart. Thanks to my therapist for helping me sort all that out. If you don't have a therapist, go get one.
Yes, people have therapists for their dogs. You are more important than a dog. Sorry.
Yes, you are.
That's that's all humans.
Yes. If you have a car, you have a mechanic, right? So if you have a brain, you ought to have a therapist.
100% agree. Love
Kind
mine.
of how that works. Mine happens to be a Spartan, but she's good otherwise. So anyway.
You would so have a therapist that actually is a Spartan.
Yes, I make a point
to back to very serious subjects.
Extra Michigan gear every time I'm on my video chat with her, just to kind of rub it in. But all right, so several weeks ago, kind of at the beginning of this conflict, when we first decided we were willing to talk about it, it wasn't exactly the beginning. I guess it was 2 weeks in. Is that about right, Brian? Something like that.
Yeah, it was it was the early part.
Yeah, we decided we had to mention it. I said something on the air that, at the time might have been our favorite thing to engage in on this show, rampant speculation. It wasn't. It was true. It was true. So, Brian, you have the clip? All right, go ahead and roll the tape. Somewhere in the middle of all of this chaos, Hamas got their hands on some fucking paragliders and bulldozers and shit. How they got them? Don't know. This whole idea that Iran is the smoking gun doesn't seem to be any direct evidence of it.
And I mean, people would lean to that, obviously, but there's
probably, But we don't know.
We don't know. And there's no need to
There's no need to speculate about it. They had paragliders and they had bulldozers, and they busted through the fence or jumped over the fence, and they got into some of these kibbutzim and settlements that are near Gaza and attacked Israel. They killed over 1,000 people. The death toll still going up. They occupied towns. They fought house to house. They carried off hostages back to Gaza. They attacked Israel in the most brutal, horrific, savage way you could imagine. I'm not going to go into what they did because it is too painful to consider. But if you can think of an awful atrocity, these terrorists committed it. And it took the army more than half a day, basically, to get there and respond. Keep in mind, this country is geographically the size of like Fairfax County. So it shouldn't have taken that long. And the vaunted intelligence service of Israel either got caught with their pants down or let it happen. You can choose which of those two things you think is true.
Ooh, that is a very Jesus.
Fascist Playbook 101. So the thing I said turned out to be true. Is that the Israeli intelligence basically knew that this attack was coming. And look, all right, we got to talk about this, but we have to do it very carefully. We have to say something important here. There's a lot of like misinformation and bullshit out there talking about that Israel either planned this, orchestrated it, or whatever. That's not what we're saying, and that is not what happened. There's also some people saying that maybe they let it happen because Benjamin Netanyahu has reasons that he wanted it to happen. I can't quite go that far, but I'm not going to say that's outside the realm of the possibility. But as a general rule, never attribute to conspiracy what can easily be explained by stupidity. And in this case, that seems to be what we're dealing with. Gaza is a really small place. Israel has the ability through their surveillance to basically see everything that goes on there. They can see it all from the air. They're listening in on all the cellular networks, the radio networks. Hamas basically had to defeat this by stringing up copper wire and talking through their tunnels like on old school phones. That's their only way they could hide this from the Israelis. But turns out those were tapped too. Ultimately, it turns out that Hamas had this battle plan, and the New York Times blew up this story. They had the plan for what became the October 7th attack for almost a decade. And they continued to refine it bit by bit by bit as they learned things about the Israelis. They lulled the Israelis into false senses of security by kind of laying low and not shooting off rockets for a while. And they just sort of like played into their politics. But all the while, there were folks inside Israeli intelligence, inside the IDF, inside Mossad, inside Shin Bet, who knew that this was going on, that they were planning this. They could see it, right? The training camps were open to the air. Everybody could see it. If you got a bulldozer in Gaza, you can't hide it from a surveillance drone, right? They can see all that. You can see them practicing paragliders. You don't just get in a paraglider and try to fly across the border and like attack some people for your first time flying in it. You test it out a few times first. They saw all of that. The problem was, who saw all of that, Stacey?
You know, this is not unprecedented in the world history of Pearl Harbor comes to mind, that a lot of people thought the government knew about that and wanted it to allowed it to happen so that they could get involved in war.
Speaking of which, today's Pearl Harbor Day.
That has escaped my mind until just now. You're absolutely correct.
7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
In infamy. But yeah, I don't think you're wrong, but
but specifically within the IDF, within the Shin Bet, the folks who knew that this attack was imminent, or not imminent, but could possibly happen. They all had something in common, which you
is
have, but I don't.
so, maybe it could be called, let's say if you said it, it would be assertive. If I said it, it'd be aggressive. Is that
That's
where you're getting?
Yes, or if you said it, it would be bossy, and if I said it, it would be leadership.
Correct.
Yes.
If I said it, it's an old wives' tale. If you said it, it's science.
Science, that's right. Yes. So everybody who knew about this, there were women, and the commanders who noticed this imminent attack were like, "Hey, we ought to do something about this," and the folks who they reported to waved them off. And they were given a bunch of excuses, right? They were told, no, Hamas is these planes that you've intercepted and have dead to right and can attribute to everybody involved and is very clearly what's going on. It's aspirational. They're not really, they don't mean to do this. They're just writing stories to inspire themselves or something. Like you do. You just write battle plans for fun.
You don't?
I guess maybe you probably no comment. But
different kinds of battles.
Yeah, I'm not gonna not commenting. Okay, but there's also some question about, oh, well, I see you think that they have bulldozers and paragliders and are drilling how to attack these kibbutzim in plain sight in their training camps that you can definitely see from your helicopter hovering over them. But also, they're not capable of that, silly lady. And the silly lady was like, well, they seem pretty capable. I mean, I'm watching them do it. And they're like, no. Why don't you go back to, Bacon Hollow or whatever? And
maybe you don't know what a bulldozer's supposed to look like.
Yeah, right. Maybe you just think that's a bulldozer. That's really a tractor or something.
A lot of problems in this world would go away if people started listening to women, and I will live by that till I die.
Yeah,
I will die on that hill.
Somebody stops listening to you when you're saying I'm having a heart attack, and they go, no, you're just a little verklempt or whatever. It's
just heartburn.
Yeah, right. Women don't get heart attacks. Of course they don't.
Come on, Miss Elizabeth.
Right. Yes. It's so this is several of the things that are this show kind of all at once, right? Here we have let's put the fascism aside because we're about to get to that. So there's fascism problem. We'll talk about that. Ignoring people who have good information because they are of a different group than the hetero men that run the world. That's a stupid mistake. And it needs to stop. It keeps happening.
It happens a lot.
It happens a lot. And it just should not at all.
From a historical perspective, it's happened a lot.
Over and over and over, right? We were talking before the show a little bit off air about the Greek myth of Cassandra, right? And here she is telling everybody hey, I'm a soothsayer. I can see what's about to happen. Something bad is about to happen. Everybody should listen to me. And they all go, no, you're a woman. You don't know what you're talking about. And then it comes true and they all, pay for the thing. And the few men that survive the catastrophe say at the end of that myth or story, I don't know, maybe it's true, go, oh, we should have listened to you. If we had only been a little more open and willing to listen to you, we could have saved all, the whole city and everything would have been fine. And we're, now we're paying for this for the rest of eternity. And that was 5,000 years ago. And
we have learned.
And nobody learned anything from it.
And the whole point of all of those stories was so that people would learn things.
Yeah, it's not like the Greeks wrote down these myths for fun. They're not fun. They're supposed to be stories to teach you something in case you don't know, You don't want to confront that in real life, right? You don't want to find out your sister knows more than you, so that's fine. So you find out that there's a story where some other, woman knew more than the men around her, and you can be like, okay, well, it's like Cassandra. You don't have to take the blame. You have to be like, oh,
Makes you wonder why they had to write like Oedipus, like don't marry your mother. That was something we needed to learn.
not interrogating that question at all.
Different story. But yes, all throughout history, people have not listened to those who were not already in power. And it has created a lot of problems. And
So
every
that
once
is
in a
like-
while, you get somebody who does, and then they're known as like this amazing person who had all these ideas, but in reality, they just listened to other people.
All they did was listen. All they,
Yeah.
and the great leaders in all of history are mostly great because they bothered to listen. That seems
I heard something interesting about this the other day, that it said, think of everybody you think who's like accomplished amazing things in their life. Someone else was doing their laundry.
That's true. In my wife's case, it's me.
This was blowing my mind because the only way you can kind of accomplish all these amazing things is if someone else is kind of cleaning and cooking and doing all these things for you. So people who have accomplished what we would call great things are usually men or people who are extremely wealthy and had other people to do that.
That's true.
And it blew my mind. I have a degree in history, and that blew my mind.
Well, you have a ladies' degree in history, so
I mean, it's from DePaul. It's like a real
it's
school.
fine. They don't play high school basketball.
I only got half of it at Purdue. It's okay.
Whatever. All right. So the other thing that we need to talk about, not going to let football ruin this, is the fascism aspect of this. So, like, yes, the men who were in charge of the Israeli defenses didn't listen to the women, but also there's this other thing, which this week the Israeli courts reopened. They were closed because of the emergency of the attack, which makes sense, right? And you think, all right, well, so courts are back open. Cool, criminals are going back on trial. People with their traffic tickets, they can get it handled. Somebody else is in court. Who's in court this week? It's Bibi, the prime minister. Yeah. Benjamin Netanyahu, he's in court. He's facing like 1 million indictments for corruption because he's very corrupt and he's a criminal. And so
I really thought you were going to talk about Trump when you were talking about
we'll get
in
to
court and fascism. I thought that's where we were going.
Same thing. Okay. So the clip that Brian played was right before I got onto this thing about why Bibi might want a war to happen, which is to say the government in Israel is barely hanging on. It's made up of a weird fractured coalition of far right-wing extremists and their right-wing allies who are slightly less extreme than they are. It sounds a little familiar. And like they are by their actual behavior fascist. Now, I want to be clear about this. I'm Jewish and I'm telling you this right now. You can be Jewish and be fascist. Benjamin Netanyahu is fascist. His government is fascist. You cannot be Jewish and be a Nazi. Those are not the same thing. So when you hear the Republicans in America talking about how Zelensky, who's the president of Ukraine and is Jewish, is a Nazi, no, he isn't. And he can't be, because that's impossible. When you hear people like me tell you that Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli government is acting like a fascist government, that can't be anti-Semitic, because they're not. What they are is authoritarian and fascist. Those things are not the same, and you need to decouple and understand what those words mean. Benjamin Netanyahu is running an authoritarian fascist government. He is supporting racists in the West Bank who are trying to eradicate Palestinians in order to seize their land and expand their territory with no legal jurisdiction whatsoever, that's fascist. He's penalizing people for dissent. That's fascist. He's trying to unmake the judiciary, which caused riots in the streets of Tel Aviv. That's fascist. Benjamin Netanyahu is a fascist. And his government is made up of people who are even more extreme than he is. They are fascist. And what do they need to keep the rest of the Israeli population off their ass and calling for a new election? Because remember, they're parliamentary and they can just call snap elections, and they did. Well, you have a war. You have an
Like the
emergency.
dog.
You have some reason to suspend general order and create some different governance structure. And then maybe you just kind of keep that going for a decade.
It's very Machiavellian.
It's exactly that. And
Excellent movie, Wag the Dog.
it's exactly that. Except it's real this time. In that movie, it's a fake war that they made digitally and with movie tricks and stuff. And in this case, it looks like, and I'm not saying this is exactly what happened, but it does look like the folks in the Israeli government had some idea that this attack of October 7th was a possibility. And they either allowed it to take place for their own purposes or just sort of generally waited for it to happen for their own purposes. Their own purposes being fighting the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu is facing criminal charges in several court cases. I don't know how else to spin this, but it is, as I said several weeks ago, fascist playbook 101. He tried to remake the judiciary. He was met with protests in the streets. If some external attack happens and it creates a situation where you can say, look, it's too dangerous to change leaders midstream. He's got a wartime cabinet. He's got a unity government. He's got all these things. It's hard to call it anything else. And then the way that the IDF is behaving in Gaza, I get it. You got to eliminate Hamas. Yes. You have to take away their opportunity and ability to attack Israel. Yes. But every time you bomb a hospital, no matter how many tunnels are under it, which we're about to get to, or every time you kill thousands and thousands of children, even if you eradicate all the current Hamas fighters, somebody is going to come and take their place. And you've just given them a whole lot of reason to do so. There is no good solution here apart from actual peace. And I don't mean lack of war. I mean peace. I mean Palestinian sovereignty and safety and security and prosperity in a way that they don't have any reason to attack Israel. That's how Israel achieves peace, which is not what they're currently doing. You know what else? Hamas. So, the last few weeks, Israel was bombing hospitals, and everybody's like, whoa, dude, what are you doing? Bombing hospitals, right? It's pretty fucked up. We shouldn't be bombing hospitals. You know what doesn't belong in a hospital? Bombs.
Tunnels.
But you know what else doesn't belong in a hospital? Tunnels. Or Hamas. Or terrorist command and control facilities.
I think it's really hard to figure out what is actually the story there.
Well, it's not that because tunnels are there, right?
Yeah.
So Israelis watched these tunnels be built. Let me make something clear. Remember what I said. The Israelis can see everything happening in Gaza. Everything.
Right.
If you get Domino's in Gaza, they know. They're like, what are you doing? Get pepperoni? That's not kosher. They tap the phone line. They know. Okay. So when they saw cement trucks pouring cement into a hole in the ground, they're like, oh, what are you doing with all that cement in the hole in the ground? Well, they're building a goddamn tunnel. That's what they're doing. Hamas has built 300 miles of tunnel in a place that's only 25 miles long. That's from one end and back several times. Okay. They can do that, and they've been doing it, and the Israelis watched them do it, and they saw where all the shafts are. There's hundreds and hundreds of these tunnel shafts all over Gaza, and the Israelis have found, documented, and videoed hundreds of them. Some of them happen to be under hospitals, children's hospitals, no less, under UN shelters, under schools, under places that they know you shouldn't bomb. Why did they do that? Because they think that that's going to provide them some sort of security. So both sides of this conflict are basically saying they don't give a shit about the lives of the people in Palestine. The Israelis will bomb them indiscriminately because they're focused on their security. You got to eradicate the bad guys who are hucking rockets at you. You got to go after the people who brutally attacked, raped and pillaged, carried off your people, kidnapped them. You got to destroy that. You got to. If that happened to you, you do it too, right? However, how dare you bomb our hospitals? It's our wounded, our people are sick and dying, the children, the babies, and the NICUs who built the tunnels under the hospitals. Israelis didn't build tunnels under the hospitals. Hamas built the tunnels under the hospitals. They bear some of that responsibility too. Nobody's right here. And as we said before on this show several times, it is okay to say that this is tragic. It is okay to weep for the lives of the children in Palestine who have been killed by the bombs of the IDF. And it is also okay to be crying and apoplectic about the hostages that have been captured by Hamas. And it is okay for people on both sides of this conflict, Jewish, Arab, or otherwise, to say the loss of life is tragic. Doesn't mean you're supporting one side over the other, but you can be very clear that the loss of life is tragic and you can do something about it, which is to say you can funnel your resources, if you have them, to people who are trying to help, whether that's the UN, whether that's Doctors Without Borders, whether that's any of the relief organizations and agencies that you think can serve the people. Because at the end of this, you have two groups of people, like we said before, who are being held hostage by their leaders who they didn't have a choice in this. So there's our Israel update.
And listen to women.
Yeah, for fuck's sake, listen to women. Shit, thanks, Stacey, for reminding me. Very happy.
I think in your house you don't have a choice, but the rest of the world.
Yeah, there's I'm the only dude in my house, dogs included. But yeah, for God's sakes, listen to the women. Sometimes they know what the fuck they're talking about. Would that kill you? Would it kill you? Unless you want it to happen, then you just,
For women to speak up takes a lot of courage. So when they do, please listen. In any culture.
Also, we should give all the women in the world super soakers full of hot sauce.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So whenever they say something and the men just like fucking ignore them, that's it. All right. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a break. We're going to squirt some hot sauce on a snack. When we come back, we're going to talk to our guest who is waiting in the bullpen, Nora Shalloway Carpenter. We cannot wait. She's written all kinds of great books. It's going to be cool. Okay? So you're listening to Chip Chat on Beltway Radio and beyond. Sweeps.
Dawn. Let me take you on a journey through Carmel City. Listen, Moose, on tour. Bubble baths on the top floor, Players Club. Back on the concourse, let the dawn score. She came for the encore, the guard pure. Pay me hand in hand, let a player do his dance. Never compromise the brand. Surfing over avalanche, you don't stand a chance. We working, not catalog perfect, no lie. Had to level up the fly. You still pepper dry? I'm chilling courtside. She brought a friend just to slide. Get it right, all this ball work. Got your bra out her skirt. You call it rhymes. Real ism, every line made her toes curl. Private flights out this world, brought the feeling back. Ain't no telling what we do with rap. All the ghosts notice what our pens noted. Could have been the poets that I'm pulling up and notice. Gave them more money, Jack Frost, yeah, I'm golden. Legendary moments got me feeling like I'm next. My voice over beats just tend to connect. Me and names, we a threat. Doing numbers all summer, still ride through the city. I still ride through the city. Doing numbers all summer, still ride through the city. I still slide through the city.
Yo, this is for the day oneers. Could write a book on the game, take a page from us. Never give the bullshit like a maze runner. With the sample and the drum, I create summers. No room for butterflies when the revolution being televised. We don't get excited when it's low when the market rise. Chocolate boy wonder till infinity. Timeless, never chase a clock, but you'll remember me. A day's work deserves a day's pay. And publishing is old, cut my check with no delay. I ain't searching for the goals or the rainbow, but I will pull up to the label like I'm Django. Paid my dues, so pay my fee. I'm soul brother number one, and I need my trees. The architect to multiple classics. To beat Muhammad Ali, first you gotta be Cassius.
Doing numbers all summer, still ride through the city.
Riding through the city.
I still ride through the city. Doing numbers all summer, still ride through the city.
Carmel City too.
I still slide through the city. Doing numbers all summer, still ride through the city.
Riding through the city.
I still ride through the city. Doing numbers all summer, still ride through the city.
Carmel City too.
I still slide through the city.
All right, welcome back to ChipChat December. I'm your host, Chip. With me tonight is Stacy. Say hi to the people, Stacy.
Why, hello there.
You're supposed to say hi to the people, Stacy.
Hi to the people.
You never seen Burns and Allen or heard of Burns and Allen, or say goodnight, Gracie. Goodnight, Gracie. All right. Anyway,
Just trying to bring a little class.
oh, okay. Speaking of which, Nora Shallow Carpenter is a writer who has written about everything from rural America to frogs. A little bit more on that later. It's a hot topic on this show. She has a new book out called Fault Lines, which is about mental health and fracking, which there you go. Nora is also a collector of stories, and she has so many to tell us. Nora, welcome to Chip Chat.
Hi, it's so nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
We're very excited to talk to you. So I want to jump right into this because, we did a little bit of research here. We have several books that feature themes about rural America.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of seek to present that section of the country to those of us who don't often interact with rural Americans. So the question is, what are we East Coast elites missing?
That's a lot, I would say. So basically, this started because my first book that dealt with rural America specifically is Rural Voices, which is an anthology of 15 rural authors. And it's a response basically to the horribleness that is hillbilly elegy, which was really beloved by most of the population who are not rural, because I think it really fit, it fit what people kind of wanted to believe and thought was true. And there's so many problems around that book. And while that may be one person's story,
Senator Katie Vance's story.
right. There's lots of things to be said. He spent summers in a rural place, but
he's not from the place that he wrote about, but he presents himself as if he is one of these people.
Exactly. And it was very clear. I mean, the book came out and my husband was like, oh, he's going to run for office. This is why, this is not difficult to figure out. But what really bothered me was that right after that book came out, And at first I was excited because I didn't know, I was just like, oh, there's gonna be this will be cool. Before I read it. And then I just started seeing like my friend, like people that knew me, that really cared about me, just like raging about rural America. And certainly there are a lot of problems in any place. And so I don't want to say that rural America is without its problems, because that's definitely not true. But the idea of this like rural monolith, where I think if you talk to most people and you're like, oh, tell me about what you think a rural person is, like almost immediately they'll think of like it'll come across as like a Beverly Hillbilly kind of, like stereotype. Where,
checkered flannel shirt with a giant belt buckle and
yeah, exactly. I mean, like even like my first job, like first professional job, was in Washington, D.C. And I was invited, I was super young, like early 20s, and was invited to this party with other work people. And somebody found out I was from West Virginia, and the very first thing they said to me was, "Oh, like, is your husband your cousin?" Like, that was like the first thing that was said to me, and I was so mortified. I mean, I just like, I remember like I could feel like how red my face was. It was just like, but imagine like if you just met someone for the first time and like that's what you say to them. And
whoa.
so
To be clear, New Jersey still allows first cousins to get married. So I just want to be clear about like where this fault line. West Virginia, you cannot marry your first cousin.
No.
New Jersey, you can.
Listen, it's just the fact that I feel like for most people that's a thing that you would find insulting, or it's often
Rudy Giuliani married his cousin.
Well, I don't know what,
my God, like
I don't know what you want me to say.
So, do you focus mostly on Appalachia, or like my redneck part of my family is in rural Missouri in the Ozarks?
Yes,
which is like a totally different thing than Appalachia.
It's very different. So, rural voices is all over the country. Like there's rural Alaska, there's rural, Georgia, like all over. Rural. Let's see. Sorry, I have a new project that I can't really talk about. That's more.
We're gonna ask you about new
Appalachian stuff.
Hold that one.
We won't tell anybody. Don't worry.
Okay.
Yeah, nobody watches this show anyway.
Well, I'm excited to be here anyway. But no, my story, so I edited those stories, but I also wrote a short story in Rural Voices, and that story is set in rural West Virginia, very similar to where I grew up. And then my new book, Fault Lines, is set in rural West Virginia, and there are very, very few young adult novels set in rural West Virginia.
I'm gonna say it's because they don't know how to write over there, but then you're gonna put me in your next book.
There you go. I feel like you need to read Rural Voices. You're like the target audience. So
it turns out there's lots of smart people from West by God. But all right, so we were trying to ask this question of ourselves earlier and we couldn't figure it out. Now we happen to have an expert here. What do you call, so an author is somebody who writes, a poet writes poetry, like an anthologist collects anthologies, but like, what do you call that thing of collecting anthologies? Like that's not the collecting, right? Like what's the word for the person
who curating, or like, I'm an anthologist.
Yeah. So what do you call that verb? What's the verb?
You're just an editor. I think I edit.
All right. Well, that's
curator. I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah, we wanted a better answer than that. But
sorry. That's what I'm called. Editor, co-editor, contributing editor is when you also write a story and edit the book.
There you go. Contributing editor. We're gonna call ourselves contributing editors from now on.
Okay.
All right. So many of your stories and collections, they center around social justice issues.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that's a thing that we need to focus on? And before you answer that with obviously, because it fucking sucks, you can just say, can you give us a better than what we would say about
a better answer than clearly? That's what, because we're people in the world and we should care about others. Okay.
Yes.
Yes. So I think specifically because my readership is targeted towards teens, upper teens, and college age, but very much still goes into adult. But specifically for that age, because I think that, those are the people that are making things happen in the world. And I think we need to like give them hope in a very hopeless time. And so that's why I do what I do. And I have to admit that it's, it's very difficult on some days, on many days right now. But
Shout out to Texas, though, by the way, like the slight
Sorry?
victory. Shout out to Texas and a slight victory in courts today.
Oh,
The lady get some health care.
We're getting to Texas later. You got a whole thing about it.
Yeah.
What does rural America get wrong about us city folks? Because I know this, like talking to my relatives, but interested to hear as you have. I have rural relatives in one very, very tiny part of the country, and so as someone who's talked to a broader spectrum.
Okay, so I would say, I mean, a lot too. I think it's very, in some ways, it's almost, like political parties or any kind of dichotomy where you're putting where you have us and the other. So a lot of rural people, because of the place that they're tied to, are, I would say there's like a lot of fear, and so kind of have this idea that these elite people don't understand them and are going to try and take things away from them. And so there's just a lot of misunderstanding. And so I think one of the biggest things that I try to show, especially with fault lines, is that there are much bigger things at play. You can be angry all you want, and certainly I am too, for the way that a lot of rural areas vote. But let's break down why, who's actually in charge here, who's putting these ideas out there, who's capitalizing on this fear of mostly people from lower economic, in a lot of instances, lower economic.
Who's taking advantage of people who don't have the wherewithal? I mean, that's the thing that we talk about on the show all the time.
And well, I was so interested in what Stacey was saying earlier when I was listening in about this whole idea that people that do great things, it's because they have somebody else that's doing other things for them.
Support matters.
Right. And so it's if you're focused on how am I going to feed my family? How am I going to just keep my job and keep my house or keep whatever, you don't have the ability to really think of other things beyond that in terms of so if we get into environmental issues, which is super into fault lines too. So there's a lot of rural environmentalism, where I grew up in rural West Virginia, fracking was going on, lots of things were going on. And so there were kind of these two camps, right? The people that were super against fracking, and then the people that were hey, this is providing me some money, and they're the whole economics. And it's I think we have to understand why people think the way they do, and then who is feeding them this information, and in most cases, misinformation, right? And that's often people that are in the 1%, right? The very top, and that are capitalizing on these fears and insecurities. And so this is a systemic problem that we have to go after, and just access. There's so much stuff about there's this great organization called Rural Minds, which certainly didn't exist when I was in high school or anything, but it's all about how mental health care in rural America. First of all, there's just not places to go. So you think about the skyrocketing numbers all over the world since COVID has happened, right? And people with the anxiety and depression and all this stuff, and people in rural places don't have places to go. They don't or doctors that are young and know a lot more,
for those hippies in San Francisco and shit.
Yeah.
Wait, I have to do a shout out to my sister who is a mental health professional in rural America. So
Yay!
shout out.
That's amazing. I'm sure she is like overwhelmed. I was
She
really
is incredibly overwhelmed.
Yes. I mean, honestly, it was interesting to see in my own family what happened when like a new by younger I mean, mid 30s, upper 30s.
Yeah.
Professional, a doctor moved in and took over this practice from this like 85-year-old white man, right? And like the difference of care that my family got and was all of a sudden was like, oh my gosh, I think you might be, suffering from anxiety. Like, let's do something about this. Like, let's figure this
Evidence-based
out.
care. What are you talking about?
I
What?
know. So,
Science. That's witchcraft.
yeah.
So
Right.
one thing I've noticed is most of the mental health stuff in rural America, at least in my own experience, having family there, is very centered around addiction. And
Oh, yeah.
if you're not an addict, then you don't have any problems.
Yeah.
What have you seen since you're talking about mental health in rural America?
I mean, so my experience with mental health so we do have addiction like in my extended family that has happened.
Everyone does.
Yes, but my what I deal with mostly is not addiction. It's it's in fact I have another anthology called Absolutely Normal, which is all about mental health short stories. And so I personally have OCD, and I it's I don't want to say it's easy for me to get care, but like it's way easier. And
There are less barriers.
yes, there are a lot less barriers. And but like when mine was kind of, I was it was very trauma induced. Like you can kind of be like on the trajectory of OCD, and then all of a sudden you have something happens and it kind of like tips you over the edge, which is what happened with me. And I didn't know, I didn't know what was happening. And so I think like, and if you're in a place and just the fact, like I was in an urban center when that happened, and like the difficulty that it took me to get like proper care and figure that out, I mean, it was just like, oh my gosh, like,
Could
so
you imagine if you were in a place with less access and you had somebody who had less familiarity with the system? I mean,
right. Well, even if you have familiarity, you just can't get it. Like so I'm in Asheville, North Carolina right now, and people cannot get mental health care. Like,
and that's a city where people are like street corner therapists. Like
yes.
There's so much, people think of Asheville as like Berkeley East,
Yes.
and it's still hard.
And I mean, like, especially like with this, like the schools, like there are so many kids. I have 3 kids. And so, we know a lot of kids, and like so many kids are on waiting lists. Doctors are like, I know a doctor that is taking kids up. His last appointment is 8 p.m. I mean, like, these people are going above and beyond trying to help, and you can't like do that for an extended period of time. You can't burn yourself out. Like so anyway, all that is magnified in a rural place. And so, in my first book, The Edge of Anything has that's kind of what one of the themes of it.
This kind of makes me think about is it's like, the quote that got cut when Hillary said we're going to put a lot of coal miners out of work. But there's the second half of that sentence, which is, and get them better jobs.
Yeah. Right.
And that got so badly misinterpreted. But most of the time when I talk to people from these regions, that environmentalism is huge, right? These are people who are tied to the land. So they talk about, oh yeah, these assholes are dumping stuff in the water. They're messing up the soil. They're spraying this stuff on the crops. It's killing things. The coal miners are the slag that from the mills is dumping everywhere. It's, they're very keen about the danger of heavy industry interacting with nature. They seem to be really keen on that. And then you ask them like, well, what do we ought to do about that? And they go, well, I got to make some money to feed my family while I can, and I'll worry about that stuff later. And
right.
that is a hard compromise for people to make. But the urban equivalent thereof is people who say, well, yeah, this gentrification is bad, or they say that, you know, these dollar stores are bad, or they say drug dealing is bad. And you say, well, yeah, but I gotta sell drugs so I can feed my family. And both sides are getting demonized here by groups who seem to be able to ignore the fact that people are doing what they have to do because they're stuck in a situation not of their own making.
Yes.
And they have no other choice but to operate in that circumstance.
Right. And I mean, they're dehumanized, basically.
That's it.
Yes. It's easy to judge and hate on people that are not like, that you don't really consider people. Like if you don't hear individual stories, it's when we hear people's individual stories and you're like, oh, I could see how if maybe I was actually in that same situation, I would have made that same choice, you know? But we've just gotten so divided as a society in every way that we can't move forward. I mean, look at our ridiculous government right now that can't, you know, like.
I mean, I think that what you said there about individual stories really matters, because once people have some personal connection to something that happened, they're able to say, well, you know, that might be true of a lot of people, but I know a guy who had, or I know somebody who had. So
it's hard to hate up close.
It is.
Yes.
It's very difficult. So like, as you're collecting these stories, are you thinking about how to present the humanity of marginalized or dehumanized groups to the greater, you know, to the greater culture, to the greater group?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, sometimes even to myself, like in Fault Lines, there's two characters. There's one who is from rural West Virginia, like her family, generations tied to the land, right? And fracking has come in and it's destroyed something that's really, really important to her. So she's like on this anti-fracking campaign. And then there's another character who his mom, you know, is a veteran. She's a single mother and she has finally gotten a job with a pipeline company. And that's what brings them to this small town. And this job is like keeping them off the street, basically. So it's like their lifeline. And so, you know, some of the arguments, in order to make him real, in order to bring him to life, I had to like confront some of my own biases too, right? And both characters do that in the novel, because I think it's, you know, you run a real danger, and it's so easy to like hate on people from social media too, because you're not like, you know, you say all these things that if you were talking to an actual person, you would never say. But I think like we have to learn collectively, all of us, how to talk to people that have differing views from us, and not just shout over them, but actually listen. You guys were talking about listening to women earlier, like listen to what they're saying, to why their views, and then you can start and change hearts and minds by having discussions and coming together, and hopefully, and then coming up with new solutions, right? Because clearly we're just in a stalemate in so many ways right now, and things are not getting better. And hopefully, like what I hope my stories do is allow the readers, you know, to kind of live vicariously through these characters and then translate that into their lives going forward. That's the goal.
I think that, you know, when you get some commonality with somebody, even if it's something real minor, it's when you go, oh yeah, that happened to me too. Then they're like, oh, okay. All right. So, you know, like it bridges the gaps. So let's talk about, you know, bridge is like a yoga position. That's one of the things I've learned. You have a book about frog yoga.
I do. Well, it's just yoga, but a frog does it.
So it's frog yoga. So noted frog scientist Alex Jones is very worried about how the woke libs are making all the frogs gay. Your response?
Oh, I admit I'm unprepared for this question.
That's the correct response.
Okay. Yoga has nothing to do with sexual preference of frogs.
Right.
All frogs can do yoga.
All
Yeah,
frogs can
whatever
love
the
who they love. Love who they love.
There you go.
All right. So your new book, which you've referenced a little bit, Fault Lines, it's about people impacted by fracking.
Mhm.
How did you gather the stories and the research about this without going totally nuts? Because it seems like a really complicated, as you've already sort of alluded to. There's no like clear-cut right answer here.
Right. I mean, if there was, I feel like we would have moved beyond. We would have
Right.
found it, right? So a lot of it, like I said, I grew up in the northern panhandle of West Virginia, and when I was, fracking came in, I guess I'm trying to think if I was like maybe 14 or so when it started, 13. And so I know a lot of people that were impacted by it. I talked to friends, I interviewed some people that work for the pipeline company in West Virginia, just basic on the ground research like that you would do. And then obviously read nonfiction books about the science and what has happened in lawsuits and stuff and all of that, to have a good background of both sides. And then it's just a lot, then you go about fictionalizing, what the story, like what's happening. And so pulling different pieces of all of that and putting it into, a story of my own creation.
Did you ever get a chance to talk to anybody whose water caught on fire?
No, I did not. However, we had a pipeline explode about like a mile from my house.
Oh, sure, that's cool.
Yeah. So my mom, I was actually at volleyball practice. I was in high school and it was on the weekend. And so we were downtown, like 15 minutes away in my small little town. And my mom comes racing into the gym with my little sister and we had 3 dogs at the time. All the dogs are in the van. And we found out later, because it was a national story, and we found out later that you could see the explosion from airplanes like 30,000 feet
Oh, wow.
above. Yeah. And it was so hot that the firefighters told us that like it melted their wheels, like when they went to like go. And it was miraculous that no one was hurt. Like there was a house very close by and they got a settlement, which was like pathetic, but like, and that's another thing too, where if you read about actual court cases and like the difference that people are paid, and they want they want neighbors to like not talk about money because that's not polite, but really it's because like you have this one person over here that's paid like a ridiculous, it has made wealthy, and then everybody else is paid peanuts basically for what things are actually worth. But that's like a whole another issue. But yeah, luckily no one was
Explosions you can see
hurt.
from airplanes is never a good selling point. Like
No, that was so yeah, so we were like right in the thick of it, and I have to say it got to the point where I mean my parents lived in their house for 30 years, and they finally moved down to North Carolina. They're older, and just for medical reasons and stuff, it made sense. But it got to the point where when I was an adult, I couldn't go back there. Like it was so, the land was so devastated, like what had happened, that it was just painful to return home. Like it was just
place anymore.
no, and like it you would just hear, you could hear like there'd just be like this constant like because of this, thing that's a ridge over, but you could hear it. I mean, it was just awful. And one of the reasons, the argument is like, okay, well, we need power. We need these, we need these things to live. So and of course, if you put them in rural places where most of the people making big decisions don't have to see them, don't have to deal with all that stuff. That's easy to overlook. It's easy to make those judgments when you're not living with all the
Well, and if the people
yuckiness,
impacted
right?
are poor or dehumanized or whatever, it doesn't really matter
Exactly.
what you do to them.
Exactly. Right. And a lot of this idea of like, well, they could just move, I mean, that's just like, it's just that's not real. It's not
With what?
practical. Like if like really in a lot of cases, what people have, their only resource is the land, like is their property. And so if it becomes unhealthy, if they can't use it or they have to leave, I mean, that's terrible. So there's a lot of documented cases where people stay in unsafe environments because they literally
can't
cannot,
move.
they have no other place to go.
Right.
So it is definitely not a black and white issue. And it's certainly something that needs to change, because I'm definitely not advocating like we just have to leave everything alone. No. Like definitely we need to change things, but we can't, like you say, we have to include the second part of the quote. You can't take away someone's livelihood before you give them a replacement, that is as meaningful, like that's good work, that is like makes them feel like they're
Contributing,
supporting their family, like not working at, well, I don't know, there's not even like really a good example, but anyway, yeah, that's my whole spiel. Step back off my
all right, so where can everybody get your books and stuff? Is the Fault Lines out, or is it?
It is, yes, it came out in September. Yep.
Okay.
It just got selected to be on the Texas Tayshaws list, which is this big state book list for the whole state of Texas, which is really, really exciting. So yeah, you can get it anywhere that books are sold. You can get it at your favorite indie bookstore, which is always the best.
Always.
But you can also get it online. So yeah.
And where can everybody follow you so that they can stay up to date and know when you're going to do? Also, I wasn't aware Texas had book awards. I thought they were very against books over there. But
I was going to ask if you were banned.
No,
Yeah.
well, so Texas is so interesting. They, the librarians in Texas have so much power. They're kind of like they're like the leaders of.
Who knew?
There's just,
there's librarians in Texas?
Oh my gosh, so many. But
we're learning so much.
Yes. And I just have to say real quick here that I am like, because I'm just so upset about it, but basically West Virginia has eliminated like every school librarian position in the whole state. So
that's shocking.
But
also,
no more. I will go on a rant about that as a public school teacher anytime.
Yeah.
Let me tell you.
Yeah.
Why doesn't Greg Abbott stand up for Texas librarians? He should stand up for them. He doesn't do that. Where can everybody get your stuff?
So following me on Instagram is probably the best. And I'm at Nora Carpenter Writes. And you can also just go on my website, noracarpenterwrites.com, and I have all my info on there. So yeah.
All right, cool. Well, we're about to tag you in a bunch of stuff because all next week there's going to be lots of clips of this show where we're saying ridiculous things, and you're going to be tagged along.
Wonderful. Very informative.
I learned a ton. Stacey, how much have you learned today?
I have learned a lot. I have brought up all of my teacher training on hierarchy of needs, has like regurgitated.
Yes.
As someone who, taught public school in a very poor urban area, I'm seeing a lot of parallels. So yeah, my brain started working, which I think
I love what you say
amazing.
there, like, because there are so many parallels, which I think when people read the stories, they're like, oh my gosh, like my life is so different from this person, but also so similar,
Hierarchy of needs are hierarchy of needs, no matter where you live.
Exactly. Yep.
Right.
Totally.
So, all right, top on the hierarchy of needs, of course, is this show. So, one more time before we take a break, Nora, where can everybody follow you on the Instagrams and all that stuff?
Yeah, so that is at Nora Carpenter Writes on Instagram. And then my website is noracarpenterwrites.com.
All right, great. We're going to tag you in a bunch of stuff. We need to take a break because we have the third half of the show to get to, which is going to be fantastic. I'm told. I haven't read the script, but it's going to be good. All right. Thank you, Nora. We know it's a school night. We got to get moving on. Thank you to everybody who was tuning in to hear her. Now you're going to hear more of the show. We're going to take a break. You're listening to Chip Chat on Beltway Radio and beyond. Sweeps.
Thank you.
I'm sick of all these witches and warlocks. They're full of shit. Pumpkin popsums. I'm sick of it.
You keep interrupting me.
And all of it's lies. Because you're lying. That's why. Oh, there's energy and now we're done with Trump. You said he was the Messiah. You said he was invincible. I will not suffer your Q people after this. I knew what you were day one. I know what you are now. Witches and warlocks are full of shit. Pumpkin popsums. I'm sick of it.
You keep interrupting me.
And all of it's lies. Because you're lying. That's why every goddamn thing out of your people's mouths doesn't come true. You said it was all over. Q tells us stuff. Q. Oh, God. Witches and warlocks, you're full of shit. Pumpkin popsums, I'm sick of it.
You keep interrupting me.
And all of it's lies. Because you're lying. That's why witches and warlocks, you're full of shit. Pumpkin popsums, I'm sick of it.
You keep interrupting me.
And all of it's lies. Because you're lying. That's why. Because every god thing.
I don't want to see him kissing goblins, ingratiating goblins, in bed with a goblin. I don't want to see him kissing goblins, succubus with goblins, ingratiating goblins, in bed with a goblin. I don't want to see him kissing goblins, ingratiating goblins, in bed with a goblin. I don't want to see him kissing goblins, ingratiating goblins, in bed with a goblin. Dump it. Charging into a goblin's nest, some goblin vomit and slop and blood on it, especially up to his ankles. Trump charging into a goblin's nest, some goblin vomit and slop. Goblin vomit and slop. I'm not expecting him to not get dirty slop. Kissing goblins, ingratiating goblins, succubus with goblins, in bed with a goblin. Kissing goblins, ingratiating goblins. I just want to catch him in bed with a goblin, in bed with a goblin, in bed with a goblin, in bed with a goblin. I just don't want to catch him in bed with a goblin, bed with a goblin, bed with a goblin, bed with a goblin.
All right, welcome back to Chip Chat here on Beltway Radio and beyond. I'm your host, Chip. With me tonight is Stacy.
Hello.
Hello. Stacy, how'd you like our guest?
That was fascinating. I learned a lot.
Yeah. Turns out smart people come on this show. Did you know that?
I had no idea.
Yeah, right. Nobody else did either. Speaking of which, it's worth doing a little promo for next week. Joining us next week on the schedule, I don't know how the producers of this show manage this, is recently retired from NPR and his tiny desk. Bob Boilen is going to be on the show. Yeah, so we can't.
Did you know our last guest received an NPR endorsement for one of her books?
Was on the NPR book list. Yes, that's very true.
Yeah, I recently just read that.
May or may not have been how we got in contact with her. So, in any case, yeah. So Bob Boilen's going to be here next week, and we're going to ask him about his band and his other radio show on Tacoma Radio, Low Power, which I think you might be able to pick up where you live. So, if you do,
Tacoma's like a block and a half away.
Yeah, so you should definitely be able to tune in. Also, shout out to the Tacoma Torch, by the way. Great new article just this week about what happened there with the famous parking lot at Tacoma Junction, which will remain a parking lot thanks to the steadfast environmentalism of the people who have lived there for 20 years as opposed to the people who've lived there for 15 years. Okay. Moving on. Tacoma Park is a caricature of itself. We are on from our last segment, which was about the Israeli right, on to the American right. Now, quick updates here. There was a GOP debate yesterday. That was pure silliness. Absolutely not worth paying any attention to, including
because no one did.
Nobody did. And
they had like 4 guys that watched.
Nikki Haley was like, no, I'm not going to respond to that. It's not worth my time. So that tells you everything you need to know about it. Trump, that guy who used to be president, he thinks he's still president, but maybe about to be president, and sometimes thinks he's both at the same time. He told everybody that he would be a dictator, but only for a day, which I'm not sure how that works, because like once you dictate things, it's like that's the thing.
We were all just a little impressed he put the word tater at the end.
It's correct. Well, and didn't finish it with tot. I thought he would have gone
so much there.
So much. He made Hannity laugh a bunch because he was like, yeah, I tell Hannity what to do, and he doesn't tell me what to do. And Hannity was like, ha, 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 yes, sir. That was pretty funny. And that guy, what's his name? DeVolder. What was his drag name? I don't know. He had a few. Santos. He got kicked out of the house.
You forgot his name already?
No, I didn't forget his name. I forgot all of his other aliases. We had some good names. What were some of our better names for him? He had, he had all his drag names. We had like a whole episode
those drag names.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that a little insulting to the drag community?
Special.
That's right. So when we come back after the Christmas break, Brian traditionally does a clip show special where he plays us clips of our previous clips. And our job is to guess the file name of those clips, which is usually much funnier than whatever we guess.
I have listened to that show.
Yeah, it's pretty good. All right, so
you don't do very well usually.
No, we lose at that game every time. All right, so that's the stuff that we don't have time to talk about. Here's what we're going to talk about: Texas, Dateline, Austin. There's a Texas Republican Party. Do you know about that?
Is there any other party in Texas?
Yeah, it turns out, but it doesn't matter about them. Right now, we're talking about the Texas Republican Party, which may or may not be in charge of all facets of government in Texas. 2 months after a prominent conservative activist and fundraiser was caught hosting white supremacist Nick Fuentes, leaders at the Republican Party of Texas have voted against barring the party from associating with known Nazi sympathizers and Holocaust deniers.
Well, yeah, or else who would they talk to?
Right.
Those are all the people that give them money.
It gets much worse. In a 32-29 vote on Saturday, members of the Texas GOP's executive committee stripped a pro-Israel resolution of a clause that called for the party to confront its ties to groups that have recently employed or associated with outspoken white supremacists and extremists. In October, the Texas Tribune published photos of Fuentes, an avowed admirer of Hitler, who's called for a, quote, holy war against Jews, holy shit, entering and leaving the offices of one of these consulting firms that works with the Texas Republicans. So here's what happened. They were like, yo, we need to pass a resolution that says we support Israel in destroying Gaza. Because they didn't say like destroying Hamas and restoring, dignity to the Palestinian people. They were just like, we support Israel, full stop. And then some of them were like, maybe we ought to make sure we don't hang out with anybody who wants to kill all the Jews. And they're like, whoa, 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 whoa. So they voted against it. Then they had another vote. I think we ought to publish who voted against this and who didn't. They were like, whoa, 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 whoa. They voted that down too.
I mean, we're back to hierarchy of needs, right? Like, if this party wants to survive, the people they depend on are not nice people.
Yes, but this encapsulates and highlights this thing that we have been talking about on this show for a while, which is when you've got people like Texas Republicans, Ted Cruz, Greg Abbott, Dan Patrick, all these guys who say stuff like, we support Israel, but when they have an opportunity to say, and we don't support Nazis, they go, no, 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 no. So it needs to be made crystal, like Pepsi clear, that when these fucking guys say they support Israel, but they can't say they don't support Nazis, they don't support Jewish people or Israel. Like, you've got to be clear.
It's a little sad you have to spell that out. I feel like that should be pretty evident, but I guess not.
Fellow tribes people, join me over at camera only one. Guys, these are not our friends. I keep telling you that. Here they are literally voting on whether we should be or should not. They are not our friends. Take their money. Let them give us the money. That's fine. We'll need missiles, clearly. But also, they're not our friends. And don't be out here associating with these Jews for Jesus or these other sort of right-wing Nazi idiots. They're out here. Attorney General Ken Paxton recently impeached Attorney General Ken Paxton, who just managed to avoid getting impeached because his wife was sleeping with God knows who. He was like, no. We don't need to tell anybody who voted to keep the names of the Nazis off of our books. It's fine. That's a problem. It's a problem. If you're Jewish and in Texas, leave. Run. Come here.
I mean,
we'll hide you. It's Maryland.
how many are there Jews in Texas? Like,
yeah,
more than a few? Is there a strong Jewish presence in Texas? I honestly have no idea. I try to avoid the entire state all the time.
Yeah, I think there was, but they left when it turned out that the other people showed up. They're like, oh, we got to go. I don't know. Isn't happening?
I grew up in New Mexico. I've hated Texas since childhood.
Yeah, well, New Mexico's not a lot better.
I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying we're taught from a young age to despise the entire
Texas.
state.
Yes, that's understandable. Yeah, I think most of what used to be the Big 12 knows to hate Texas. All right. Speaking of things to hate, January 6th. Got a little update here. Brian, I think you might have added this to the script here.
Yep.
This is about your favorite swimmer. How do you say his first name? Cleat? I think it's Cleat Keller.
Yeah, Cleat Keller, yeah.
His name is Cleat, as in Cletus. Look at this guy. He's a real winner. He is a winner, right? He's a bronze medal
winner. He actually is a winner.
He's also...
He has won things.
Definitely won a medal and definitely stormed the Capitol. He was convicted. What's he doing now, Brian?
Well, he is... he did get convicted, but the thing is, his sentence is a probational one, though.
Yeah,
that was the weird thing, but it will be up to at least 18 months, I believe.
Yeah, they wanted 10 months in prison and said he's got a year and a half of probation. Apparently, he was really
an Olympic gold medalist.
Well, it's not like he's in a real sport like curling. Speaking of real things, in a new court filing, prosecutors working for special counsel Jack Smith went further than they did in their August indictment in attempting to tie Trump to the riot. They said that at Trump's criminal trial in Washington, currently scheduled to be in March, which pin in that because there was just an appeal filed and a bunch of legal garbage back and forth, really, that might delay that. If you haven't noticed, Trump's basically trying to delay everything as much as he can.
How does he still get lawyers? I don't understand.
Most of them demand their money up front, which is currently how it's been going because,
I mean, fair enough. I would too.
Yep. So old Jack here is talking about how they intend to introduce evidence of Trump's behavior before the 2020 presidential election and his subsequent threats to establish that his motive and intent were to subvert the election and that he sent the people to the Capitol on the 6th. It's not just that he sort of said things and they chose to go of his own volition. Quote, evidence of the defendant's post-conspiracy embrace of particularly violent and notorious rioters is admissible to establish the defendant's motive and intent on January 6th, that he sent supporters, including groups like the Proud Boys, whom he knew were angry, whom he now calls patriots, to the Capitol to achieve the criminal objective of obstructing the congressional certification, prosecutors allege in a 9-page filing. At trial, the government will introduce evidence of this conduct, including the defendant's public endorsement and encouragement of violence, and further will elicit testimony from witnesses about the threats and harassment they received after the defendant targeted them in relation to the 2020 election. Okay, so that's complicated. Some of this is like obvious, right? The dude is out here publicly talking about, Proud Boys, go attack things, and I told you to do it, stand up, stand down, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But why would they introduce this now as they're getting ready to go into trial? It's because they've got something, right? And they have to give all the evidence. In the United States, trials are fair, theoretically. And so...
All right. We're going with that? Okay, cool.
For white guys, trials are sort of generally fair. And so if the prosecution has evidence, they're supposed to turn it over to the defense so that they can interrogate the evidence and be able to present a case, that's equal and balanced. That's the basic.
It's called disclosure.
It is. Or discovery, maybe. I think it's maybe both. But either way, I'm not a lawyer. Basically, what do they have that they now have to discover to Trump? I'll tell you what they have. All those Proud Boys that pled guilty to save themselves from going to prison for 100 years. And they've all got text messages and they've all got phone calls and they've all got all this stuff because there's no honor amongst thieves. And these guys all recorded everything. Of course they do.
Oh, yeah. They will throw each other under the bus so quick.
So quickly. So they're all basically what Jack Smith is signaling is, hey, we got somebody who's about to tell everybody under oath that Trump told him to do it. And you better get your ducks in a row, hoss. Don't worry, though. Trump's spokesperson was like, he will not be deterred and will continue speaking the truth to corrupt, weaponized power in law enforcement, or whatever he's on about today. Hooray.
I would be shocked if it was one person. I think this sounds to me, it's like a collage of, he's not shy about talking about it in front of everybody. He wants the credit for this.
That's right.
This is like A Few Good Men. He wants to say it.
Yeah, he's proud of it.
Yeah, he's so proud of it that, it cannot be that hard to piece together all the things he said, plus of all this other stuff that I'm sure other people are saying to get themselves out of trouble.
Right.
Yeah.
So the J6 committee basically did a lot of this work for DOJ, and then they handed the file to him, and this is it. We're seeing the results of what we all knew was already the case, right? The dude did all this shit in public. And now we've got people who are sworn to say so under oath and the receipts, and we've got the emails and the text message. It's like, if they were half as smart as they are violent, they probably would have got away with it. But they're just fucking, man, woman, camera, TV, person, whatever. They're really stupid. Trump's really stupid. He's like a mob boss with 8 thumbs. He's just like he can't get anything right.
If he was a TV show, like if this was all fictional, no one would watch it because they'd be like, this is so unbelievable. Who wouldn't see through this guy?
Well, it would be like a Futurama character or something, where
Right.
it's like, you know, this is some sort of alien. It's a caricature, right?
Right. You would think this is a cartoon. There's no way this would be real.
Well, what we learned from Liz Cheney's book is that all of the House Republicans referred to him as Orange Jesus. So in all of our efforts, and Colbert's efforts, and Kimmel's valiant efforts to give this guy a name that would stick, turns out Orange Jesus is the one that sticks.
I mean, that's not even creative.
No.
Come on.
So my kids call him what I call him, which is Dangerous Pumpkin.
See, that's so much more creative.
Yeah, the Dangerous Pumpkin is bad. Speaking of the Dangerous Pumpkin, this segment is called No Dummy. You can't use that in court. Ever since he was indicted on charges of interfering in the 2020 election, Dangerous Pumpkin has relished the chance to use the case in Washington as a venue to air his baseless claims of political fraud and whatever else. So now his current filing is that he wants to know what happened to these 2 guys who are called, quote, Fence Cutter Bulwark and Scaffold Commander. So in QAnon world, or whatever the fuck it's called now, they've got these videos of people that they clipped in ways to show them doing things that they think are doing this thing, but that's not really what happened at all. And the rest of the video is very clear and shows that. And they show these clips over and over and they go, look at this guy. And you go, right, look at him. Here's the 30 seconds before and 30 seconds after. And that sort of clears it up. They go, no, look at just these 3 seconds of it. And you go, right, he's moving the bike rack out of the way. They go, right, he's clearing room. He's obviously Antifa working for the FBI and shit. And you're like, okay there, Haas. Thanks. Go see us.
I mean, he's still trying the like I'm rubber, you're glue defense, and it didn't work in 3rd grade, and it's not working now.
Well, but it's worse than that because so like here's where this gets the rubber hits the road. There's a guy called MAGA Mike Johnson who is nominally Speaker of the House at the moment. His razor thin majority, pin in that, we'll get to it in a little bit, allows him to do all kinds of things that the Speaker of the House can do, which includes releasing all the footage of the Capitol Police from January 6th. The Department of Justice already has all this footage. They are currently combing through all of it, and they have tried and convicted north of 1,000 people. 1,000 people for violating the law on that day alone. That's a lot. The government doesn't generally move that fast. That's a lot. Okay, so MAGA Mike was like, yo, we're going to release all this tape because we want to show that this was kind of no big deal and it's all fine. And we're going to have maximum transparency, he says. But he's like, we can't release the tapes just yet because we got to blur out all the faces, which is exactly what you do when you're doing transparency. And
I mean, in a picture, if you're making things transparent, never mind. I can't even begin to.
It was like, no, we don't want anybody to retaliate against him, including the Department of Justice. And you know, none of his staff was like, oh, they already have the tapes. So, like, not only that, but this stuff is like wicked incriminating. Like really bad. But it's also easy to make up dumb shit about. Case in point, there is a clip of a guy walking up to the Capitol Police and showing his hands with something in one of his hands as he's walking up to them to show them that he's unarmed, which is true. He is, in fact, unarmed. He does have something in his right hand. That's true. Senator of Utah, Mike Lee, elected senator of Utah, Mike Lee, was like, hey, what about that guy who walked up to the Capitol Police and showed him a badge and they let him in? That shows that this was a fix and that this was all staged and the FBI was in on it. Good point, Mike Lee. We ought to check that. Who was that guy? Any idea? He was convicted. He was convicted of storming the Capitol, and the thing in his hand, it was a vape. Wasn't a badge. It was a vape. It was a vape.
Not even like a Metro card? Like,
Nope. Just he was holding his vape. He was like, look, I'm unarmed. But he's had his vape in his hand, because he had been, vaping in the Capitol as an act of rebellion. I don't know. Like, that guy had already pleaded guilty and is serving time in jail. But Mike Lee got that tiny clip of footage and jumped on it as if this was evidence of some sort of, alternative reality. Now we've got.
I don't know how to break this to you, but there is no truth on Truth Social.
It's not just that it's on. Lee's, first of all, still on Twitter, and people are still looking at this. And MAGA Mike is releasing 44,000 hours of this stuff. So they're going to be able to clip tiny little pieces of all kinds of things and string them all together. But the reality is what's being fought out in court, because you can't just make shit up in court. To wit, it's spelled Kevin. Keven. Kevin. Before we get to the story that is number one in this script, I want to get to the second story in the script. Donald Trump, Orange Jesus, Dangerous Pumpkin, is torn into Liz Cheney over claims made in her new book about his reaction to the 2020 election. The former Republican representative of Wyoming, an anti-Trump Republican, has written in her memoir, Oath and Honor, about Trump. Among her claims is that Trump became depressed and stopped eating after he lost the 2020 election to Joe Biden, prompting Republican Representative Dumb Kevin McCarthy to visit him. Newsweek contacted representatives for both Trump and McCarthy via email to comment on the story. This is where I grabbed this from. They didn't comment. Cheney said she asked McCarthy why he visited Trump at his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida 3 weeks after the Capitol riot on January 6th. That was the day when hundreds of Trump supporters stormed the Capitol and, shit on the walls. Dumb Kevin told her that it was because he was worried that Trump wasn't eating and he was depressed and sad. Okay. That's pretty reasonable, right? Your friend lost an election. He was publicly humiliated. You haven't heard from him. You might go check on him, right? You ever done that for a friend of yours?
Like last week. Not because they lost an election. They were just going through some stuff. So
you brought them.
Showed up. We sat on the porch. We drank a bottle of wine. It had a heart-to-heart. Yeah, that's what you do.
An entire show on this network called Hard Talking and Overcoming, which is about exactly that. You're going through something. Somebody shows up with a cake, or in my case, several sandwiches, and they go, look, here.
Another Midwestern friend brought a casserole.
Right. If you're Jewish.
A traditional Midwestern gift.
Yeah. Oh, somebody died. Here's a kugel. You'll feel better.
Here's a hot dish. But
right.
yes.
So that
Continuing.
was
So
claimed
so
that-
far we're normal-ish.
So far, Liz Cheney is claiming that, you know, dumb Kevin was like caring about his friend, and that's cool, right?
He showed up with a casserole.
Showed up at the casserole. According to Trump, that's not what happened. Quote, crazy Liz Cheney. All women are crazy when Trump writes things.
Yeah.
Who suffers from Trump derangement syndrome at a level rarely seen before, writes in her boring new book that Kevin, Keven, Kevin McCarthy, said he came to Mar-a-Lago after the rigged, all caps, election because the former president was depressed and not eating. That statement is not true. I was not depressed. I was angry, all caps. And it was not that I was not eating. It was that I was eating too much. But that's not why Kevin, Keven, McCarthy was there. He was at Mar-a-Lago to get my support and to bring the Republican Party together, only good intentions. Liz Cheney, on the other hand, went on to lose her seat in Congress by the largest margin for a sitting congressperson in the history of the U.S. She then worked with others on the J6 committee to delete and destroy the evidence and findings of the committee. That's what he wrote. So he misspelled.
Where do you want to start with that? Because there's a lot there.
Go on.
Okay, so I'm not depressed. I was angry. Okay. The definition of depression is anger turned inward. So those are not mutually
Well,
exclusive
men
terms.
can't be sad. They can only be angry. That's one of the rules.
Right. Yeah, I have a book for my son that says boys can feel more than just happy or mad.
No,
I want to teach him that. But yes, clearly Trump did not get that book. And that I was eating too much. Actually, that is more believable than not eating.
Sure, but
He's
like
a rotund individual. I think
Correct.
we would notice had he stopped eating. However, if he put on another 20 pounds, I'm not sure we would. So that I'm going to go with, I'm going to side with Trump on that. He probably was overeating instead of undereating. But the point being, inappropriately eating.
But his being accused of like he wasn't eating. He's like, not only was I not eating, I was eating too much. It's such an overcompensation.
I know.
Instead of being like, no, I was eating fine, he was like, I was eating too much. Like it's a badge of honor.
You know, a lot of depressed people do overeat. So if he's saying I'm not depressed, but here I am overeating, he's not helping the I was not depressed argument.
I was angry and furiously pounding nachos.
Throwing cheeseburgers against the wall. Yeah, and then at the end he's like, only good intentions. Well, okay. Cheney said he went down there to check on his friend. That sounds like a good intention. What was this evil intention that he was assuming she had talked about? To make sure he was eating? The guy's not gonna waste away to nothing anytime soon, even if he wasn't eating. Let's be real. Like, that guy could not eat for months and probably still be okay.
Hibernate, man. Like, he could be.
I mean, that's pretty petty to, like, pick on his weight, but, like, you brought it up, dude.
Right. Not only that,
He
but
brought it up, not me. I didn't bring up this. This is clearly Trump saying I was eating too much.
So one of the telltales that Trump typed out a fake tweet as opposed to dictating it or like speech to text is misspellings. But there's
yet another child left behind.
Right? So like there's Kofefi is like the famous one, but like Kevin.
Yeah, every drink in DC was named that for a while.
That's right. But
some really delicious ones, actually.
Keven, Kevin. I don't know if autocorrect like wouldn't catch it.
I mean, the most common spelling of Kevin would be Kevin, which would be how Kevin McCarthy actually spelled it. So even if it was autocorrected, it would have autocorrected with the I. I don't know. Here's my phone. I was gonna try it.
Well, speaking of Keven, who now has to change his name to be spelled that way, of course, because in
Obviously.
Republican politics, once Trump misspells something, that's the way it's spelled. Is he going to change his name? Maybe he doesn't have to, because what did he announce this week?
He's leaving us.
Yeah, he's fucking gone. He's
Which reminds me of a boss I had once who left. All right, so I was a school teacher. School year starts in September. He left in November to go into consulting. Turns out there was like 4 lawsuits against him. So this is like, I'm not quitting. I'm going into consulting.
So Dumb Kevin is leaving the house after being ousted as speaker, and he's doing it in a really like petty way, right? So obviously he's going to go off to some lobby shop.
Okay, hold on. Before you get to you, name any other senator that's leaving by forcefully has never left petty.
Well, a lot of them just like, disappear into the sunset.
Right. But
they just shut up for 6 months and don't run again.
Yeah. But the last 2 we've heard, they're leaving petty. It's like,
so there's like 40
there's some commonalities there.
People who are not returning next term, whether that's because they're not going to run again or because they got forced out or whatever. But
if you're going to leave, that's the acceptable way, is you just don't run again.
Just say you don't run again and, want to spend more time with your family or whatever. But Dumb Kevin is leaving midterm, and he's doing it in a particularly petty fashion. To your point, Brian, the guy who most recently got forced out before him went out in a blaze of glory, talking about
went out in a blaze of something.
All the puppies from the veterans or whatever. Like he burned all the bridges on his way down. Kevin is not burning all the bridges, but what he is doing is he's sticking his successor with a serious fuck you. Mike Johnson is operating on a margin so thin, it was recently accosted by P. Diddy. I'm going too far. Sorry. It was recently accosted by Harvey Weinstein. No, I can't make that same joke. So, the Republicans have a very thin majority in the House. And when Dumb Kevin leaves, it falls to even thinner. California law requires that the governor, Gavin Newsom, calls for a special election in a certain period of time, but the fastest somebody's going to get into that seat is June. So not only is he mad that they forced him out, but he's figured out how to screw them on his way down. Santos got cast out of the House by overwhelming numbers. And then Dumb Kevin leaves. Mike Johnson's down to a 3-vote margin. 3. That means if they don't all show up on a given day, somebody's sick or whatever, his chance to govern is over. And watch one of them catch a wild hair and decide they want to vacate the guy, because, of course, MAGA Mike agreed to the same rules as Dumb Kevin. House could fall apart. Could fall apart again. It's so easy. The precipice that this government leans on is so close. It reminds me of these places like Israel or Italy or even Great Britain, where somehow David Cameron's back in government. And Boris recently had to go in front of a tribunal and was like, I'm not sorry, fuck all y'all. They're not learning anything.
All white men. I just want to put that out there.
Yeah. The right-wing white men who have run the world continue to fail at basic governance.
And yet women are too emotional. Is that what's often said?
Yeah, you're too emotional.
Did
and
you see the temper tantrum these men have thrown in the last week?
over some odd shit or whatever.
Yeah, we're too hormonal and emotional, and yet these have been fairly epic temper tantrums.
You can't understand math. I heard.
Right. Oh yeah, there's the angles problem. I forgot.
Yeah, angles. Hey,
Every time I come on the show, you're gonna have to link that article now.
did you hear about the time that somebody got the first photograph of a black hole?
Yes.
Yeah. What was her name?
It's
You don't have
not
to
on the
actually
tip of
know.
my, it wasn't my husband, so
It wasn't your husband. He should have tried harder.
yeah, it's a sore spot.
Shout out to your husband who probably has to like live in like the nerd jock world of Goddard, where like everybody has several discoveries and they all like lord it over each other. Like, yeah, that's a great galaxy, but did you see this nebula I found?
Yeah, the world of people who study black holes is not that large.
No.
They all like work in the same office.
Fucking nerds.
Yeah, my life is Big Bang Theory, and I'm Penny, so
I don't watch
I
that show,
hang out
but
with
I'm
a
sure you're
lot
right.
of incredibly smart people. But yes, that was. There are a lot of incredibly smart women at NASA. I do know that.
And
The
then
science world is
hang out with us.
the science world is showing a little more equality than maybe the political world.
Speaking of equality, let's talk about curling for a second. What's going on
Okay.
with our curling club?
Well, there was a board meeting that I did not listen to because I was in Pittsburgh, spending time with my family at a science museum. And on Facebook yesterday, USA Curling, welcome back to the Potomac Curling Club, to which pretty much everyone who didn't spend their Thanksgiving weekend listening to the board meeting went, I'm sorry, what?
I think
We had no idea.
Our own board of directors at Potomac Curling Club also said, what?
I mean, they voted for it, so they should know.
Yeah, but they hadn't gotten a confirmation back from USA Curling.
Yeah, that's what. So then we did get an email that said we were waiting for a confirmation. And I feel like it's one of those things like, you paid the membership fee, you're in. Like, there's not like an approval process. But maybe there is. Maybe. Can we get Dean back on and ask this question?
Yes. So
Okay.
he's been in contact with us and he wants to come back. So you and I are gonna have
Friend of the show.
Special episode where we friend of the show, Dean Gemmel, is gonna be on, and we'll have to ask him about, hey, what's up, man? Like, not only should we be back in, right? Which we're glad to be back in. I'm glad to be back in. I'm personally glad to be back in after they basically agreed to nearly everything that we said in the first place, which seemed pretty obvious and everybody's cool with. But I'm also glad to be back in because I want to be part of the group and I want everybody else, to be in. Also, I just want to get everybody back on the show and like to talk about it. Wouldn't it be really cool to just have the curling show? Really, like, wouldn't it be great if you and I, Stacy and Chip, settled the great GNCC USA curling?
And to say that is the one outstanding is there. Yes, USA Curling has made a lot of changes. They made a lot of leadership changes, which I think is what was most important to people, is that, people who love and care about the sport and know about it are actually the people who are making decisions about it, not kind of nameless, faceless board members who have nothing to do with curling, and, abusive soccer coaches or soccer. What was his title? President? So anyway, people who are involved in the sport are now kind of running it. A lot of it has been, and I have to give props to USA Curling for doing this. They, instead of saying like, we are the people who know everything and are in charge of everything, a lot has been kind of farmed out to committees and task force of people who actually do know about that kind of thing. Friend of the show, Deb Martin, and is handling some DEI. There's a have you ever had Bobby Todd on this show? If not, she
didn't
needs to
have
be
her
on your
on.
list.
But we've been trying to get her on.
Yeah, she's very awesome person, is like, working on anyway, all these people who are incredibly smart and the sport loves them have been tasked to kind of look at a lot of different things, including like there's an arena curling group now made up of people who actually are part of arena clubs. And, what a concept to look at the people who are actually involved in it and ask them what they need and want. Shocking. Instead of telling them what they need and want. So yeah, I appreciate that part of it. And that even if some of it's kind of playing for the camera, I appreciate that people who know stuff are being asked about it instead of just
the camera
assumptions
angle
being made.
that is totally fine if it yields results.
Yeah.
Look, people can accuse it of being fake, or they can accuse it of being PR or whatever. If it works, it works, right?
Yeah.
If we're all back in, we all just want to be back together. Really, I mean, curlers are not adversarial. We're sort of a friendly bunch as a group, and we'd like to put this kerfuffle behind us.
There are still some unhealed wounds, and we can have. I can't wait. We definitely need to do like what are we, like a year and a half later follow-up shows, because there are some things that have gone really, really well, and there are some things that I think still need to be hugged out, for lack of a better term.
Yep.
But yeah, GNCC is part of it. And I started working with USWCA after that whole kerfluffle, because that was a group of people that I thought were really good group of people who fell into a deep pit and needed to claw their way out. So I personally started working with them. But there's still some stuff there that could be hugged out. But I feel like we're healing as a group, slowly but surely, but it's happening.
I think we'll get there. And we'll work to facilitate that. We'll stay tuned. There's more coming. Okay. The Justice Department unsealed charges Monday against a retired ambassador. He was an ambassador to Bolivia, who was charged with like spying for Cuba for like 30 years. This is like some serious shit. This dude, they weren't even paying him. He was just like in on the cause. Yeah, there he is, man.
That's the most dangerous.
So he's like a committed like Castro Cuban, like Marxist comunista, like all the way there, Che Guevara kind of guy, right? And he worked his way through the State Department by embodying this persona as this right-wing conservative Republican. And he gets these jobs, and he ends up being appointed to ambassador to Bolivia. And he's working in the State Department. He's working, he's a real high level guy. And the whole time he's funneling stuff back to the Cubans. For 30 years, 40 years, he was funneling stuff back to the Cubans. I forgot what year it is. Since the 70s, this guy has been shit. Okay, since the 80s. Don't make me that.
I think of the 70s as 30 years ago.
Yes, that's right. We all do.
The 90s.
Not how that works. So, but this dude was up to it, man. And he had access to everything. Everything. And he funneled it all back to the Cubans. What I'm shocked about is that he's going to trial. They caught him and they put him in jail, and they're gonna revoke his bail and all that stuff, and they're gonna try to convict him. I was sure if you did that, and like turned over our secrets to the Cubans for that long, and the FBI caught you, you had an accident in a gunfight or whatever. Like,
Well, I'm sure some do. This is the one we're hearing about.
good on the right. Good on the FBI for being a little more on the up and up. Let's call it. You know.
I mean, you got to figure they've caught other people that have, had accidents.
Correct.
So every once in a while, if you catch someone, you probably do need to put them on trial just to prove that that's still a thing.
Yeah.
But yes, it is shocking that he wasn't in a horrific car crash. Or maybe we all just watched too many movies. I'm not sure.
No. You're right. That's correct. Okay. The last thing we want to talk about is the Belties.
Congrats.
So our network, Beltway Radio, this is basically the end of year one. This network has been around for almost a whole year. When we finish December, we will have finished an entire year. When we start in January, we'll be brand new. And that will be year 2.
You'll be a toddler.
Ish.
The terrible twos. Watch out.
Of Beltway Radio. Now, listen. We're not going to say we've been great, but I want to say for briefly on the show that this year I've learned a ton, mostly about how little I knew going into this and how inept and unqualified I am to be running a network and doing anything like this. Fortunately, I have very, very clever and brilliant partners, the 420 guys, who have really helped and really done most of the work. I just show up on Thursdays and yammer about stuff in a microphone and occasionally program things in a computer, all of which could be done by somebody smarter than me. So I really don't even need to be here, but it's been an honor. So we had our award show last Saturday, the Belties, and a lot of people won some awards. Brian, you won some awards.
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Yeah, and so I really want to know. Well, first of all, Tez is not here.
Yes, every award show that he was supposed to be at, he never showed up for.
That's correct. So this is the 3rd award show in a row since he's been on this show that he did not make it to. And tonight was when I was going to give him the speech that I didn't get to give him at the award show. And then again, he's not here. So
he's afraid of the award chips.
He's betting 1,000.
He's afraid of success, man.
Correct. So I'm just going to read this so we have it for posterity and we can put it in a clip and tag him in it 100 times on social media that he doesn't care about. So here is the speech that I wanted to give for Tez for the award for ChipChat. You ready? This award is really for Tez. He's been on the show for several years, though at times it may feel like several lifetimes. Tez brings insight and his favorite word, nuance, to the radio in ways not heard even on the big public broadcasters. His relentless pursuit of guests and dedication to show preparation are evident in the quality product that he delivers every week. Tez, this award is for you. Hooray! Yeah, that was the speech I wanted to give. Because he doesn't do any of that stuff. And I wanted to watch him come up and have to explain all that. But anyway, Brian, how was the award show for you?
For starters, it did interrupt my Exotica fun time.
Sorry about that.
But all in all, it was a really good festive event. shout out to you and the 420 guys. I mean, for year one, I felt like it was a good way for you all to acknowledge the rest of all the programs on the network. Because pretty much I understand what you guys were doing when you hand out. Pretty much it was like everyone got an award. So and I appreciate that, especially when I won. Giving me an award for super producer, and I saw it on the belt, so which was kind of cool. So yeah, I think it was nice and fun. So it was very enjoyable. So thank you to you guys.
So what we did, just so everybody knows, is that it really we gave thank yous to all the shows. It wasn't just, we had awards, right, that people voted on for best new show and best personality, and then we also had best show, and then we had some extra awards that we as the network kind of leaned on. But we wanted to give special recognition to you, Brian, for being the super producer, as your belt says. And because, I mean, really, this whole thing doesn't work without you. And we could not be prouder of what you do here. And I couldn't do what I do without you. So it really means a lot, to have you be on the team, and it really, it's fantastic. So we wanted to thank you, but we also wanted to thank all the other shows because they stuck with us. This was our first year running this thing. We were handed a functional network, and we mostly kept it functional. Had a few hiccups, a few computer glitches, but sort of up and running, I would say. So that felt pretty good. Also, the show went off really well. It was supposed to be a 2-hour show. We kept it within time limit. We kept it moving. We didn't have a lot of downtime. Nobody got bored. Nobody got tired. Nobody got in a fight. So, compared to other previous award show with this network, it's pretty.
I think like I said, it's a year one. Year one, you kind of want to keep it simple, keep it intimate, and what you guys did, which was fine. So I believe within time you'll probably be bigger and grander. Maybe depends on how you guys
next
feel.
year. It's at FedEx, 100%. Yeah, Brian,
outside of FedEx.
No, it'll be at FedEx. We're gonna do it. It's gonna be in the closet there at FedEx,
right next to Ron Rivera's new job.
Right in the janitor's closet. All right, so there you go. That was that's basically the end of the show. We didn't have a lot.
Yeah, it's just like any award show.
Play us off. Okay, we hear the music. It's time to say goodbye. Thank you to Brian, the super producer, as your award belt says. Thanks to all the radio stars on Beltway Radio for a great night, a great year. Thanks to our radio partners, ESPN Deportes, Big Ten Network, and the ACC Network. Thanks to NOGN for keeping us on for another week. Thanks to our buddy Key Wayne. He's holding it down there in Louisiana. Thanks to our home on the interwebs, ColdplayMedia.com. Thanks, as always, to our family here at Beltway Radio for making us sound as smooth as the Belties presenters. All right, Stacey, where can everybody find you on the social medias?
Oh, man, I haven't been on in a while, but at Currently Purple on various platforms.
On where? On Twitter? Or?
Is it Twitter anymore? On what used to be Twitter?
I don't know. I'm not going to.
Yeah, I can't do it. But it's still at Currently Purple.
There you go. All right, and you can find me on Twitter at ChipChatRR. You can find us on Facebook or Instagram at RedChipChat. You can, of course, find us every Thursday night here on Beltway Radio and beyond. I'm Chip. That's Stacey. That's Brian. You've been listening to Chip Chat on Beltway Radio and beyond. Sweeps.